Welcome to this public talk, the last public talk of October. We had a great variety of speakers coming. Just a few notes before we start. RYI, for those of you who don't know, is an institution that brings together the traditional approach and the academic inquiry. So bringing together traditional and contemporary inquiries. We have great classes in languages, both Sanskrit and Tibetan. We have great programs, and the applications for the programs and the registration for classes for next semester are now open. So if there is any interest of someone online or here, please come either to our administration office, or you can also look into our website. The next few talks that we have a great symposium on the scholar practitioner in the age of AI coming up in November 16th and 17th. Maria will be presenting there. And so will be a great array of people who will be speaking at this symposium. We all welcome you. You can find all the information on the website. And there is a week-long course, mini course, short course with John McCransky on Buddha nature. That should be fascinating also in December. So please look again in our on our website for all the information. For those of you online, Danielle will post a few links for you. So now today, you have the great opportunity, and I'm always very happy when there are some women scholars in Buddhist studies who are presenting, because there's still too few women scholars in Buddhist studies. So MariaVasylieva is RII assistant professor, a Tibetologist, Dharma translator, and an interpreter. She is RYI TTP and MA TTIP graduate and holds a PhD degree in political science and Buddhist studies. Whoa, that's quite an interesting mix.
It must.
She's been teaching here at RYI since 2018. She's also taught in foreign policy and international relation at the Diplomatic Academy of Ukraine, and most recently Sanskrit textual studies as Khyentse Foundation Chair in Buddhist Studies at the International Buddhist College of Thailand. Maria's academic interest includes research and translation of Mahāyāna sutras and shastras, in particular, comparative textual studies of Dunhuang manuscripts and Tibetan canonical collections. So please welcome Maria with me.
Thank you very much, Professor Diane, for organizing this talk. And also, I'm grateful to Dr. Julia Stansel, our Director of Studies, for encouraging me to talk to you guys, because I'm always quite shy. Big audiences, many people make me scared. But I'm very glad you came today, because we will look together with you today at a very important Mahāyāna text. I would say quintessential Mahāyāna or aspiration text called Bhadracaryāpraṇidhāna. Also, it is known as Bhadracarya, Bhadrachari, many names. In Tibetan, Zenchomenlam, Pakpa Zempochopemenlam, and also it is called Raja, Pranidhana Raja, King of Aspirations. And I'm particularly happy that I have an opportunity to speak to you about it this year, 2024, because this year marks a 10-year history for me since I fell in love with this text. It happened here in Kathmandu in the International Buddhist Academy at the teachings of Donsar Khyentse Rinpoche. So when Rinpoche taught Bhadracaryāpraṇidhāna, here in Kathmandu, and since then my story with this text began. Then I chose it as my MA thesis research, and then also recently it culminated in my PhD research, for which I have developed critical edition of the Sanskrit text, Tibetan text of the Pranidhāna itself, as well as worked with the Tengyur commentaries. And I will tell you more about it today. Found out that actually they are subject to a synoptic problem, that 4 out of the 5 are very similar, which means that they come down to the same currently unavailable Sanskrit archetype. And then I translated it into English and also translated a sub-commentary by Lutsava Yeshide. So this was my dissertation. And so that's why I would like to share a little bit of what I have found out about this beautiful text with you. And I will not touch on any meanings of this text, etc. Right? For this, please watch recordings of Dzogchen Khyentse Rinpoche teachings, because he teaches on Pranidhāna Raja often, and recently he taught on it again, and there is a very nice teaching and recording of it. It is called Aspiration is the King. So if you search it on YouTube, you will easily find it. So this is where Rinpoche will explain everything to you, about what does it mean, what is the meaning of this aspiration, of this Pranidhāna. As for us today, I would like to look at it from the perspective of the textual studies. And since we have roughly 1 hour, I will divide this 1 hour into 2 parts. First half an hour, I will I will tell you what I know about the Pranidhāna, the Minlam, the aspiration itself. And the second half an hour, I will speak about the commentaries. So as much as we can, we will try to cover. And then in the end, of course, I will ask you if you have any questions. So if you have any questions, please be ready to ask in the end. Okay. So let's begin. You see, this is Samantabhadra. Chinese style Samantabhadra, he's always sitting on an elephant. Okay, so first of all, when we look at the Bhadracaryāpraṇidhāna as a composition, as a text, we should ask ourselves, what is it, its genre, right? So what is it, basically? First of all, we can say it is a poem. It is a poetic composition. It is now available in what we call Gatha Sanskrit, versified Sanskrit, or versified Buddhist Sanskrit. I also like when it is called Sanskritized Prakrit. I recently read a very nice critical edition and translation of both Dhammapada and Udana Varga by Ananda Jyoti Bhikshu, in which he says that actually those texts can be Sanskritized to a lesser or a greater degree. So that's why it's like a big range of what we can call Sanskritized Prakrit. But also we call it Buddhist Sanskrit. So this is a poem, which means it consists of verses. The Sanskrit meter in which it is composed is usually called Dodaka meter. It has 11 syllables per one line. And it is poetic text. So it uses many poetic comparisons. For example, Buddhas are compared with lions. Then, unabstractiveness is compared with the movement of the moon and the sky, of the moon and the sun in the sky. The purity is compared with water, which is unstained by water. Compared with lotus, which is unstained by water, etc. So it's very inspiring, very poetic text. So it uses many poetic devices. So apart from it being a poem, from the name we can guess that it is a Pranidhāna, which means an aspiration, a Minlam. So a Pranidhāna is a very important genre of Mahāyāna Sutric literature. And we can subdivide this genre into 2 kinds of Pranidhānas. First one is what belongs to Buddha Vachana, the word of the Buddha. So those texts are usually part of larger sutras. And also there are many Pranidhānas which are composition. compositions of Mahāyāna authors. For example, if you look into Tibetan Tengyur, we will find many pranidhanas attributed to Nāgārjuna, Chandragomin, and many other authors. So if we look at our text and ask what is Bhadracaryāpraṇidhāna, we will say it belongs to Buddha Vachana. It belongs to the word of the Buddha. Why? Because it appears in the Kangyur and it appears twice. In the Kangyur, it appears as an independent text, so just a pranidhana mellam, and also it appears as the final part of the Gaṇḍavyūhasūtra, which is, as you know, the last chapter of the large Buddha Vatamsaka Sutra. So that's why Bhadracaryāpraṇidhāna has its two roles as an independent text, independent pranidhana. Also, it is often called a dharani. I will tell you what does it mean for it to be a dharani. It is usually, like, if you look at the classification of dharanis, we can say that Bhadracaryāpraṇidhāna is dharma dharani, which means a method of retaining the dharma. So basically, it is recited in order to remember what is the bodhisattva practice, what is the bodhisattva conduct. This is what is called bodhisattva charya, or Bhadracharya. They usually are called synonyms. So bodhisattva conduct or good conduct, Bhadracharya, they usually are explained to be synonymous. So it is a dharani in a sense that it is repeated or it is recited in order to remember what is this good conduct, what is this bodhisattva conduct. And also Bhadracaryāpraṇidhāna is a sutra because it is part of Gaṇḍavyūha Buddha Vatamsaka Sutra. So then, if we look at how it is presented in the academic studies, then we can see that from the very beginning, because research on the Bhadracaryāpraṇidhāna has started a long time ago. The first German translation was published back in 1912. And the first critical Sanskrit edition, likewise in 1912. So you can see this more than 100 years that it is a subject of academic studies. So from the very beginning, what caught the attention of researchers was that it is an independent text which was later joined with the Buddha Vatamsaka Sutra. And some researchers go as far as to claim that actually this joining is not a good one. There is one Australian scholar, Douglas Osto, who wrote a paper on it, and he called it an awkward marriage of two texts. He said that it is an independent dharani which was joined with the Buddha Vatamsaka, and it is an awkward marriage. So there's always this kind of contradiction which is found. It said that Bhadracaryāpraṇidhāna cannot belong to the Gaṇḍavyūhasūtra because in the Gaṇḍavyūhasūtra we have a whole setting, how it was recited, how it was given. I think you all know, but just to remind you. So we have this protagonist of the Gaṇḍavyūhasūtra, which is Sudana Kumara Buddha. And this Sudana, he is looking for Bhadracharya, the good conduct. So, and he is asking this question, please teach me the good conduct, Bodhisattva Manjushri. And Bodhisattva Manjushri sends him to the first virtuous friend, Śākyamitra, and he goes there, and this Śākyamitra sends him to the next Śākyamitra, and like this, he's going from one to another. Altogether, he visits 108 virtuous friends, Śākyamitras, and the last one whom he meets is Bodhisattva Samantabhadra. So then, when the Sudana Kumara Buddha comes into the presence of Samantabhadra, Samantabhadra is sitting on a throne in front of the Buddha Vairocana. And at the same time, the sutra tells us that Sudana sees that Samantabhadra is manifested in all the Buddha realms, as numerous as particles in all the universe. And in each of these universes, there is a Samantabhadra seated in front of the Buddha Vairocana. And then all these Samantabhadras, they extend their right hand, put it on the head of Sudana Kumara, and then these Samantabhadras recite Bhadracaryāpraṇidhāna. So this whole setting is given in the Gaṇḍavyūhasūtra. So then, based on that, it's usually said that Bhadracaryāpraṇidhāna was recited by Bodhisattva Samantabhadra. And this is also a reason why it has alternative title, not Bhadracaryāpraṇidhāna, but Samanta Bhadracaryāpraṇidhāna. Yes, so the Pranidhana of Bodhisattva Samantabhadra. So, but modern researchers tell us that actually, it's quite difficult, because in the Manlam, in the Pranidhana itself, there are several verses in which Samantabhadra is referred to in the third person. I think you know all of those. For example, this famous dedication that Manjushri knows it correctly, and Samantabhadra does it as well. Like, following in their example, I will dedicate all this virtue. Yeah, we recite it quite often. So and there are a few other verses like this. For example, that if beings will recite this Pranidhana, they will become just like Samantabhadra, etc. Right? So it gives to the scholars a reason to say that, since Samantabhadra is referred to in the third person, it means that he's not the proclaimer of the Pranidhana. At least he's not proclaimer of these verses. And by extension, he's not a proclaimer of the Pranidhana. They say that actually this Pranidhana was connected with Bodhisattva Samantabhadra later on. Just because, first of all, of the name, because Bhadracharya and Samantabhadra, they're connected even through their name, right? And also because of the role of Bodhisattva Samantabhadra. Because if you look at who he is, if you ask who is Bodhisattva Samantabhadra, he is one of the 8 great sons of the Buddha. Yes, so close bodhisattvas, close sons of the Buddha. And he is the one who is, quintessential representation of the aspirations of all the Buddhas. Just like Manjushri is said to be the representation of wisdom of all the Buddhas, Samantabhadra is said to be representation of the aspirations of all the Buddhas. So by logic, it is very good to connect an aspiration with someone who is in charge of aspirations, right? So this is how this Pranidhana was connected. So, but then, if you ask my opinion about it, I think there's no contradiction, basically. Why? Because this text can be a poem. It can be a Pranidhana, a Dharani, and a sutra at the same time. There is no contradiction. And it is not uncommon for a Mahāyāna Sutra to have some other functions and roles. For example, Prajñāparamita Hridaya, the Heart Sutra, it is also used for other purposes. What is more, it is used, for example, there's this very common in the Tibetan tradition ritual of expelling the Mara by reciting the Heart Sutra. And also, the Heart Sutra is used for tantric purposes. What is more, there is one commentary on the Heart Sutra which explains it as mantra. It's tantra, basically. So it is not uncommon for sutric texts to have many functions, many roles. So that's why Bhadracaryāpraṇidhāna is, of course, an aspiration, a sutra aspiration, and also it is a dharani because it is much more than just a sutra, right? It has benefits in copying it and reciting it. It proclaims its own benefits, and it is held in great esteem for these purposes. It is the quintessential Mahāyāna aspiration. Like Tibetans know it by heart. It is part of their daily practice, and most of us Westerners, we also know this 7-branch practice, which is often found in many sadhanas, in many practice texts. So Bhadracaryāpraṇidhāna is very famous for this reason. And also, like, one more thing I want to say as to that is that, Bhadracaryāpraṇidhāna can be aspiration of Samantabhadra without Samantabhadra being its proclaimer. And I'll explain why. Because if you look for sutra connections of Bhadracaryāpraṇidhāna, of course, it is connected with Dashabhumika Sutra, which contains these 10 great aspirations of all the bodhisattvas. But also there is one more text called Karuna Pundarika Sutra, White Lotus of Compassion Sutra. And in this sutra, we find a person called Amika, a bodhisattva called Amika, who is making great aspirations. And then when he finishes making these great aspirations, Buddha makes a prophecy that you will become in the future Bodhisattva Samantabhadra. So basically, Amika is a Samantabhadra to be, the one who will become Samantabhadra in the future. And if you look at the aspirations that this Amika makes, they're very close to these aspirations we find in the Bhadracaryāpraṇidhāna. So in this sense, we can say that it is aspiration of Samantabhadra, not only because he's the proclaimer of it, but because we are practicing in his way in order to become just like him. This is what Amika did, and we are following in his footsteps. So this is also another sense of what is this aspiration, what Samantabhadra's aspiration. Also, I found very nice explanation of it in the sub-commentary by Lotsawa Yeshide, in which he says that actually there is no contradiction between the title Samantabhadra's aspiration or just Bhadracharya aspiration, because who is Samantabhadra? Samantabhadra means all good one, all virtuous one. So like his aspiration is what is all good, all virtuous. In this sense, he is a Tathagata, and his aspiration is the same as the aspiration of all the Buddhas, of all the Tathagatas. So in this sense, Yeshide says there is no contradiction to say it is aspiration of Bodhisattva Samantabhadra, because he's the Tathagata in essence, right? And this is aspiration of all the Tathagatas, of all the Buddhas. Of course, I can go on speaking about it more, but let's move on, because as I promised, I would rather focus on textual studies of this text. So let's look at the Sanskrit text of the Bhadracaryāpraṇidhāna. So first of all, what do we know about it? Date. I think those of you who study here, I've told you, you know on your own, that often in order to establish the date, the earliest date of a text, where we should look at its Chinese translations. Because as you know, Dharma came to China earlier than it came to Tibet. So usually the earliest written witnesses we have are actually Chinese translations. So then if you look at the Chinese Tripitaka, we will find there, there's this Nanzhou's catalog of Chinese Tripitaka. We will find 3 translations of Bhadracaryāpraṇidhāna. The first one is by Buddha Bhadra. It is dated to 420 CE. So he was an Indian monk and the translator of the Eastern Qin dynasty. What is interesting, this text is not called Samantabhadra's Pranidhana, but it is called Manjushri's Pranidhana. And it comments on only 43 verses. So now we have this largest version has 62 verses. Also another version has 60 verses, but this translation has only 43 verses. So Manjushri's Pranidhana, it tells us something. Then there is a second translation by Amoghavajra, and it already is called Samantabhadra's Pranidhana. So both of these two, they treat this text as an independent text, without any connection to Gaṇḍavyūha or Buddhavatamsaka. And then only in the third Chinese translation by Prajna, a monk from Kabul, Kubha, in which Bhadracharya is translated as part of the Buddhavatamsaka. So you see, there is quite a time, like 3 centuries between the first translation and the third translation. And in the first translation, it is treated as an independent text. But in any case, they have this date, 420, and this is the earliest date which we can find for the Bhadracaryāpraṇidhāna. So that's why if we try to establish, the latest period, which is usually called terminus postquem, so like the latest when it was composed, we look at the Chinese translation, so 420, right? So then from the traditional point of view, of course, it belongs to the word of the Buddha. So it was proclaimed when the Buddha dwelt in Shravasti and Manjushri traveled away from Shravasti. And then this is when Sudana came to see him. So from traditional point of view, it appeared at the time of the Buddha himself, at the time of the Buddha Śākyamitra. So that's why we can say that it appeared in 5th century BCE, from the traditional point of view. So by any case, by the method of textual studies, we have this date 420, the earliest datable thing we have about Bhadracaryāpraṇidhāna. Okay, let's move on and look at the witnesses, textual witnesses that we have. There are many manuscripts of Bhadracaryāpraṇidhāna. Why? Because it is considered to be a meritorious activity to copy it. So that's why in this National Archives here in Kathmandu, a few years ago, I saw there are 57 texts in their catalog, but last time we went, they said they have only 47. So I don't know where 10 probably got lost in a few years. So, but anyway, there are many. But what are these texts? They're just copies, usually not very good quality copies, because people who copied them, they didn't understand what they were copying, right? So just for merit production, they were copying this Bhadracaryāpraṇidhāna. But among all these texts, the oldest that I could find is this manuscript. Very nice, beautiful manuscript. It is held in Cambridge University Library, and it is dated to 1068. It is a Nepali palm leaf manuscript. So you can see where it starts. It starts from here. Yes, here, see. Yavatakechi, Dasha Dishi, Loke, Sarva. Where is it? I lost it. Sarva. Here. Triyadva, Gata, Nara, Simha. Yeah, so very beautiful text. Palm leaf text. Complete. In quite good condition. So this is the oldest manuscript I could find. There are many others, like 17th, 18th, 19th century. Some of independent texts, some of, like this collection called Dharani Samgraha, collection of Dharanis. There are several Sanskrit Dharani Samgraha and Bhadracaryāpraṇidhāna often appears in this collection. So this is the oldest Sanskrit manuscript. So then when we look at the critical work, then we have 6 Sanskrit critical editions published. So the first one, as I already told you, was done in 1912 by a Japanese scholar working in Germany, Kaikyoko Watanabe. Then next one by another Japanese, Heiko Idumi or Izumi. This just independent, Bhadracaryāpraṇidhāna. The next one, Suzuki and Izumi, they published a critical edition of the Gaṇḍavyūhasūtra, and Pranidhāna appears there. Then Sushama Devi made another critical edition in 1958. And then we have 2 others by Vaidya and Pandey in 1960 and 1994. But if you ask, are all of them critical editions in the academic sense? The answer would be no. Why? Because we have critical apparatus only in Watanabe's and Devi's editions. All the others, they don't have critical apparatus. That's why they're not actual academic editions per se. Okay, so reference in ancient Indian texts. The earliest reference I could find is in Baba Viveka's Madhyamaka Ratna Pradipa. This is the earliest I could find. So Baba Viveka is usually dated to 500, 570. There are also other references. Chandrakirti mentions it in his Madhyamaka Avatara and auto-commentary Bhashya. Then in Shiksha Samuchaya of Shantideva, it is mentioned many times, like at least 5 times. Also, Kamalashila speaks about it in his Bhavanakrama. And Atisha Dipankara Srijnana mentions it in his Bodhimarga Dipa Panjika, the explanation of his Bodhimarga Dipa. So then, based on that, we can say that it was well known in India from at least of the time of Bhaviveka. Yes, so like 500, 570, he already refers to it. So it tells us that it was known at that time. We have references to it. I think that among all these mentionings, most important for the Tibetan tradition is actually Shantideva's Shiksha Samuchaya. Because as you know, Shiksha Samuchaya is quintessentially important for the Tibetan tradition. And Shantideva in this treatise, he quotes from Bhadracaryāpraṇidhāna. He says that the dedication from the Bhadracaryāpraṇidhāna is the best among all dedications, etc. Yes, so basically he advertises a lot for the Bhadracaryāpraṇidhāna in its Shiksha Samuchaya. So I think this is the reason why it became so popular as a practice method in the Tibetan tradition. Okay, we move on to the Tibetan translation. And this is quite interesting because we don't know much about it. And I will tell you why. So first of all, date. We can see that it was translated in the imperial time because, as you know, we have these two periods of the spread of Dharma in Tibet. Ngadar, early spread, and Chidar, later spread. So it was translated during Ngadar. Why? Because we have it listed in the catalogues of the translated works, Karchaks, yeah? As it was already translated, starting from the first catalog, Lenkarma catalog, it's already there. In Pantagma, it is also there. From this, we can establish that it was translated in the imperial time. So then, if you ask about who translated it, who is the translator? Actually, we don't know. Why? Because independent Bhadracaryāpraṇidhāna in the Kangyur doesn't have colophon. So only one Kangyur edition, it is Jol or Rasa Kangyur, has a colophon of independent Bhadracarya. All the others don't have. Just say, it is finished. Bye-bye, everyone. It is complete. Yeah, no colophon. And then when we look at the colophon of Buddha Vatamsaka, it says that this was, so for example, Derge tells us that it was translated and revised by the Indian Panditas Guṇaprabha Surendrabodhi and by the Shuchen or chief editor Vasubandhu Yeshide and others. Okay. But then Naratang, Tok, and Jol Kangyur colophons of Buddha Vatamsaka tell us that actually it was the chief editor Lotsawa Vairocana Rakshita who translated and revised the translation. And then Jol Kangyur, this Lhasa Kangyur, has this independent Bhadracarya, which is different from its version in the Buddha Vatamsaka. And it says that this was translated by Indian Panditas Guṇaprabha and Surendrabodhi and by Lotsawa Yeshide. It was edited by Lochen Vairocana. So now we are like, okay, so who translated it? We don't know. Yes, so we cannot establish it with certainty. Because, for example, when this Vairocana Rakshita is mentioned, we don't know who he is. Why? Because we have Lotsawa Vairocana, which is imperial time Lotsawa, and we have another translator, but 11th century translator called Vairocana Rakshita. But we don't have any Lotsawa called Vairocana Rakshita of the imperial time. So then the question is who he is. For example, if we open Pantagma catalog, we will find one text attributed to Vairocana Samshita. And Dr. Georgios Halkios reconstructs his name as Vairocana Rakshita. I've actually told Professor Halkios that I don't think it is fully substantiated. Yeah? He told me that his reconstruction is in accord with one Japanese work, and Japanese scholar, I forgot the name, sorry, had reasons for doing it. Yeah? But actually, Vairocana Samshita is fine as a name as well. So then, who is this Vairocana Rakshita? The only Lotsawa known as Rakshita is Kavapaltsek, right? So then my idea was that probably this Vairocana Rakshita is merging of Vairocana and Kavapaltsek Rakshita together. But we don't know, basically, you see? But in any case, what I can say is that among all the imperial Lotsawas, those who were most engaged with the Bhadracaryāpraṇidhāna are Lotsawa Yeshide and Kavapaltsek. Why? Because Lotsawa Yeshide composed his own commentary on the Indic commentaries, yes, so basically sub-commentary, and Kavapaltsek translated two of the commentaries by Bhadrapaṇa and Dignāga. No, sorry, Bhadrapaṇa and Śākyamitra. Yeah, so these two are the most engaged into this work. So, but if you ask who is the translator, we don't know. Okay, and what is more interesting, if we search the Dunhuang collections of Tibetan manuscripts, there are many manuscripts of Bhadracaryāpraṇidhāna in Tibetan. Most of them are fragmentary, are fragments. But there is one manuscript which is part of Pelliot collection, which is now held in the National Library of France. It is PT, or Pelliot Tibetan 138. And this manuscript contains an alternative translation of the Bhadracaryāpraṇidhāna. So it is here. So for example, I took and transcribed the first verse. The first verse in all the kangyurs is the same. Jinie sudak chokchu jiktena, jusum shekpami sangikun, dagima lu dedak tamchela, lu dangak yidanwe chagyo. This manuscript, Dunhuang manuscript reads, Chokchu jikten dagna mi senge, jusum kunshek kandak jiniepa, dedak tamche malu namla dak, lu dangaki danwe chaksalo. From this, you can see that it is different, right? So then the question is, what is it? Yeah. So my analysis brought me to conclusion that it is probably an earlier translation version, which was later revised. And it was revised for many reasons, mostly because, there were some inconsistencies. Like, for example, here you see this, this mi, senge, yeah, etc. Like, this is an Old Tibetan spelling. It's saying mi. It's just in Old Tibetan, it's always ma, yadak, yeah. So anyway, it was revised. But then, if you ask a question, how many times it was revised? Is there only one revision or there are more? We don't know. At least we have an evidence that there is an alternative translation version. What does it tell us? That actually, when we say, it was translated by Lotsawa Yeshide, let's say. What exactly was translated by Lotsawa Yeshide, right? Maybe his translation has nothing to do with what we are reciting right now, because it was revised once, twice, 3 times, we don't know how many times, right? So anyway, just keep in mind that there is an alternative translation version. Okay, so with this, I would like to move to the commentary, okay? So I call the commentary Tika Dralpa, or Ngyachere Dralpa. Why? Because this is how it is called in the imperial catalogues. So all the translations of the commentaries on the Bhadracharya listed there are all called same. So Chope Manlam Ki Dralpa, so Tika, Bhadracaryāpraṇidhāna, Tika, commentary or explanation. So first of all, what is it? What is this commentary? Or what are these commentaries? First of all, they are shastras, tenchu, so which means treatises explaining the word of the Buddha. And also, they're actually commentaries. So what is Tika? Tika is usually explained as a commentary on words and meanings. So it's not only a tsik drill, but it's like tsik dandun drillpa, a commentary explanation of words and meaning. This is Tika. So then, in the Tengyur, we have 5 commentaries. So they are attributed to Bhadrapaṇa, Dignāga, Nāgārjuna, Śākyamitra, and Vasubandhu. And we have a Tibetan subcommentary, which is also part of Tengyur by Lotsawa Yeshide. But it's not only that, because in his subcommentary, Yeshide mentions Buddhakirti. He says that I will explain commentaries by all these guys plus Buddhakirti. Not only that, we have one reference in the Tibetan catalogues that there is another commentary on Bhadracaryāpraṇidhāna by Yonten Ö, who is Guṇaprabha. So thus, we have these attributions: Bhadrapaṇa, Dignāga, Nāgārjuna, Śākyamitra, Vasubandhu, Guṇaprabha, and Buddhakirti. So then, when we look at these texts, we see an interesting thing, that now in Tengyur, among these 5 Indic commentaries, 4 attributed to Bhadrapaṇa, Dignāga, Nāgārjuna, and Vasubandhu are very similar. Very similar. So like I first heard about them being similar from Khenpo David Karmachobel, who like told me, I think they were like, kind of cheating, just plagiarizing it, like copying from each other. But when I actually looked at it closely, I found out that it's not the case of plagiarism. It is rather, these are the texts which are different Tibetan translations of different hyparchetypes. So usually we say there's one archetype, so one proto-text. Let's say there was this text in India, Sanskrit text, but then somehow it started to be attributed to different authors. So different hyparchetypes appeared in India, first of all, and then they traveled to Tibet. And they reached Tibet as separate text with different attributions. And this is how they were translated into Tibetan. So then you ask when they were translated. So let's look at this. Okay, maybe go back. So then, we have this text in Tengyurs, and we have Dunhuang manuscripts. Yes, several Dunhuang manuscripts. There are two of the Bhadrapaṇa's hyparchetype and two of this anonymous hyparchetype, which I think is actually hyparchetype of Yönten Ö, Guṇaprabha. So this is interesting text. My favorite is this one. I will tip 146, this one. It is in the British Library. It is Stein collection of Dunhuang manuscripts. It is complete. It's the only manuscript I found which is complete. The other one is incomplete, and it is split between London and Paris. Half of it is in London, half of it is in Paris. So if you ask me why it happened, because this is how Dunhuang manuscripts were taken from Dunhuang. So the story goes, first Stein came. He knew Tibetan, so he chose what he wanted. He took it to London. And then Pelliot came. Pelliot was a sinologist. He didn't know Tibetan. So basically, he took what looked nice to him. And as a result, he took many copies of the same text because he didn't know what he was taking. So both of them were in a big hurry. So this is how texts were split, you see. I was very happy when I found the second half in Paris. I was like, wow. So I connected them, arranged them properly. So now I have it almost complete, but still some folios are missing there. So anyway, we have those Dunhuang manuscripts of this text. So next you ask, okay, how we can establish date of this kind of, let's call it tika, is this Bhadracaryāpraṇidhāna tika. Yeah, I would call it later synoptic commentaries on Bhadracarya. So when we established the date for the Pranidhana and Lam itself, we looked at the Chinese translation, right? Now we don't have Chinese translation. So basically, it looks like these commentaries did not reach China, or they came at the time when Buddhism was not translated in China anymore. But in any case, we don't have translations into Chinese. That's why we cannot establish the earliest date based on the Chinese translation. So then, can we establish the date based on authorship? We can't, right? Because it is attributed to 6 different people, starting from Nāgārjuna, which is like what, 3rd century, I don't know, 2nd, 3rd century, up to Śākyamitra. Yeah, Śākyamitra is like contested. Lastly, I saw that he's now dated to 8th, 9th century. Before, Śākyamitra was considered a student disciple of Nāgārjuna, but no more. Yeah, so now I say no way, he cannot be student of Nāgārjuna. He's now dated to 8th, 9th century. So date we cannot establish based on the commentaries, right? So then what else do we have? Oh, we need to analyze the text itself and find references in this text. So this commentary, synoptic commentary or the Tika, it contains many references to the sutras. Mahāyāna sutras, also non-Mahāyāna sutras, but those we cannot use as a tool to establish the date, right? Because how we can date Mahāyāna sutras? It's very difficult, right? But apart from sutras, it has references to two attributed texts. So first one is this one, Varna Stotra by Matrichetta and Chatushataka by Aryadeva. So Matrichetta has this in a praise to the Buddha, very beautiful praise. It is fragments are available in Sanskrit, also Tibetan translation, and Chatushataka, or the 400 verses, Shigyapa by Aryadeva. There were references to these two texts. So look, it's the only thing we have, right? Because at least, I mean, Matrichetta is problematic, right? Because the guy had a wild history. He was not Buddhist, then he was converted to Buddhism. Yeah, he was a poet before he was converted, etc., etc. It's more like legendary figure. And actually, it is said that Matrichetta was converted to Buddhism by Aryadeva. You see, but then we ask, when did Aryadeva live? Okay, roughly 3rd century. Kind of. Also, we don't know, but usually it's said like 3rd century. So this is the only clue we have. Yeah? We can take Aryadeva's date in order to establish this earliest date for the Tika, for the commentary. So then what would be the latest date? So the latest date is Tibetan translation. Yeah? So Tibetan Karchaks, Tibetan imperial catalogues, which is usually dated to the 9th century. So that's why we can establish the date of the Tika as from the 3rd to the early 9th century CE. Okay. So now, coming to my favorite. So we have seen, or like I have seen, but you will see if you look, that those commentaries, 4 out of the 5 are very similar. Yeah? So like similar to the point when I came up with the hypothesis that they come down to the same currently unavailable archetype, yeah? Which then started to be attributed to many different authors. Then this is how different archetypes appeared, and this is how they reached Tibet. So then if you ask, but who among those people, those attributions that we have, could be the most probable author? This is like, this is what I like. It's like completely theoretical work, because we don't have any witnesses for it, no reference for it from India. You don't know anything, but still we can reconstruct the context, the historical context, right? So then if you look at this list, it's quite visible that there are 2 groups. One group of guys who are super famous, Nāgārjuna, Vasubandhu, Guṇaprabha, Dignāga, yeah? They are counted among these great luminaries of ancient India. And we have 2 guys, which we don't know anything about, Bhadrapaṇa and Buddhakirti. Nothing is attributed to them in the Tengyur. We don't know anything about them. When it comes to Bhadrapaṇa, his Sanskrit name is reconstructed, because in the Tibetan commentaries, it is just Gyen Zampo. And in Losava Yeshede's subcommentary, he lists them in Sanskrit at the beginning and then in Tibetan in the end. But all the Tengyurs we have spell this poor Bhadrapaṇa differently. One is like Bhadravaha, other is Bhadrapaha, but never as a Bhadrapaṇa. So then how we can come up with Bhadrapaṇa? How we actually came up with Bhadrapaṇa? I traced it to 1915. In France, there was a scholar called Cordier who made the first catalogue of Peking Tengyur in the National Library of France. So he was the first who reconstructed Bhadrapaha in Peking Tengyur as Bhadrapaṇa. He didn't explain how he reconstructed it. But of course, I was very curious. How do we come from Gyen Zampo to Bhadrapaṇa? Because primary meaning of Gyen, right, is kind of ornament, whatever, right? But not Panna, because what is Panna? Panna is a bet, a lot, yeah, but not Alamkara in any sense, right? So, but then I found out, Professor Dorji Ivanchuk from Hamburg, he has his how to call it, chat, not chat, like a website where he posts all kind of ideas that he has, And one of those he dedicated to Bhadrapaṇa, and he took Gen in the second meaning, which is not common actually. And the second meaning of Gen is lot, kind of good. So Bhadrapaṇa would be something like a good lot. So Gen Zampo. This is how he explains it. And it's the only way we can go about it. This kind of philological analysis that Professor Ivanchuk did. But this is, I think he's correct in this sense. But then you will see this Bhadrapaṇa everywhere without asterisk, as if he is attested in Sanskrit. Actually, he's not attested in Sanskrit. Then you ask, why he's everywhere without asterisk? Has to do with Cordier. Because if you look at his catalog, you will see that his reconstructions he put into square brackets. He didn't use asterisk, but square brackets for reconstructions. But then when Lavallée-Poussin did his catalog of the Dunhuang manuscripts in the Stein's collection, he took it from Cordier and he attested in his catalog. And already in Lavallée-Poussin's catalog of Dunhuang manuscripts, Bhadrapaṇa is without asterisk and without square brackets, just like that, So this is, in my opinion, according to my research, how it all started. So now Bhadrapaṇa is everywhere without asterisk. Don't do it. It is not attested in Sanskrit, according to what I have tried to find out. Also, you can see him spelled as Bhadrapaṇa with long R. It has to do with this, Tripitaka search. In the Tripitaka search, this Otani catalog, he appears with long R, also without asterisk. It's a mistake. It should be short R and then asterisk. Okay, so then, if you ask me, who would be most probable among those? Yeah, of course, it could be someone else. Yeah, we don't know who is not listed. But if we hypothesize and say, okay, this is someone among those, who would it be? I would say someone unknown as the author. Why? Because imagine Nāgārjuna authored a commentary and then it started to be attributed to some Bhadrapaṇa or Buddhakirti, right? Quite not that probable. So in my opinion, it was composed by someone unknown. But then, because Bhadracharya became so important and also the commentary was good, it started to be attributed to these luminaries, to this greatest of the great. Yeah? So it's more probable. What else? If we subject these commentaries to thematic analysis first, this is my stemma, but I don't know if you can see. So anyway, we will see that these commentaries reached Tibet in different times. So first of all, the first translations were of the commentary or hyparchetype of Bhadrapaṇa, Śākyamitra, and Dignāga, imperial time translations. But then Vasubandhu and Nāgārjuna were translated already later in the 11th century in the Chidar. So basically, this also makes them less probable. Yeah, so the earliest attributions are to Bhadrapaṇa, Dignāga, and also since Yeshide mentions this, Buddhakirti, right? But not Vasubandhu and Nāgārjuna. So Vasubandhu and Nāgārjuna come at least 3 centuries later. This also makes them less probable. Yeah. So this way, I think it's Bhadrapaṇa, Buddhakirti. I would say Bhadrapaṇa. Why? Because his commentary seems to be popular in imperial times in Tibet. It reached Dunhuang in 2 recension lines. Yeah? There are 2 manuscripts which are different. They belong to different recensions. There are also interlinear glosses in these commentaries, which tell us that these manuscripts were studied, these texts were studied. So this way, I prefer to think that this is someone called Bhadrapaṇa who authored this Tika. But of course, I don't have any proof for this. So now I would like to tell you a little bit about synoptic problem, because probably you never heard about it if you only do Buddhist studies. But actually, this synoptic problem is quite well known to the scientists of biblical studies, and it has to do with Gospels. As you might remember, we have 4 Gospels, right? And 3 out of the 4 are very similar. So Gospels by Matthew, Mark, and Luke are very similar. They're similar to the point that scholars of these Gospels call them synoptic. Synoptic comes from Latin synopticus, which means seen together. And they usually make synoptic editions of the Gospels, like in parallel columns when they can see them all together. So synoptic Gospels. Following this, I call this commentaries synoptic commentaries because they're very similar. So what is the solution for the synoptic problem of the Gospels? There are many. One is to claim there was some proto-gospel in Aramaic language, which is lost. So basically, they drew from this proto-gospel. There is another one saying that Mark composed his gospel first, but then Luke and Matthew drew from Mark. And also they have a second source now not available on which they relied, etc. Yes, so there are many ways to go about it. And if you're interested, it's actually quite fascinating. Yeah, so how they try to deal with the most important texts for the Christian tradition, which are Gospels, right? So synoptic problem. So then, in order to demonstrate the synoptic problem with the commentaries, I developed synoptic edition of all these 5 texts. So I have them each in one column, parallel to each other. So when we look at them in this way, we can very vividly see that these are just different Tibetan translations of the same Sanskrit text. This is the most reliable way to prove the synoptic problem of this text. So then, okay, I've proved it. What next? Still, all of them are included into Tengyur. So you might ask, but why did they include all of them into Tengyur? Didn't they see that they're super similar? Yeah. So then it has to do with the question of authenticity in Tibet. So basically, how did they decide what is authentic, what is not authentic? There are many research done on that. I would recommend one by Professor Orna Almogi, Authenticity in Tibet. And basically, she says that for Tibetans, if they could see a Sanskrit text attributed to a Sanskrit author, they didn't doubt its authenticity. Yeah, for them, it was like, yes, it comes from India. Also, it is probable that, translators in the imperial time, they might be working without connection to each other. Yeah, they translated it, they didn't know that they're super similar. I think Lotsawa Yeshide should have known, yeah, because he says in his sub-commentary that, I will comment on all these Indic commentaries, and he lists all of them. Of course, he never questions their authenticity, but somehow he unites them all in his sub-commentary. So I think he must have seen, he was a great Sanskritist, he must have seen that they are very similar, yeah. But in any case, I think we are very lucky that we have in Tengyur now this, 4 basically, and also Dunhuang manuscript, yeah, but 5 different Tibetan translations of the same Sanskrit text. Actually, I have read in one paper in Japanese by Li that in China, in Beijing, in the Tibetology Research Center, they have identified one hyparchetype attributed to Vasubandhu. It is from Norbulinka collection of Sanskrit manuscripts. So it was taken from Norbulinka in Tibet to Beijing, and it is kept there in a box number 37, locked up. So basically, of course, I cannot access this manuscript because for China, Sanskrit manuscripts are also, I don't know, has a national pride issue. So Chinese only are allowed to work on them, and Japanese, who are very smart and very rich, they form translation teams and they involve Chinese into their translation teams. This is how they get access to these manuscripts. Also in Vienna, they somehow, I don't know what they did to get access to it, but so they have access to it, they can access those manuscripts, but they promised, on blood or something that they will not share it. Yeah, so it's impossible to ask them to give access to this text. So anyway, I cannot access this Sanskrit prototype. I should only sit and wait until some Japanese and Chinese scholar will publish its critical edition, then I will see it. Of course, I really want to see it. But even without Sanskrit text, since we have the 5 different Tibetan translations, we can see the Sanskrit text through 5 eyes. And by this, we can see it quite clearly. And it is a unique situation because what happened in the past in Tibet, usually they had many translations of the same text. I've read one paper by Kazuo Kano about the translations of Ratnagotra Vibhaga, Uttara Tantra Shastra, Yulama, in which he says that there were 6 translations of Ratnagotra Vibhaga. 3 of them survived till the 15th century, but then now we have only 1. Why? Because only 1 was included into the Tengyur. Everything which was not included into the Tengyur was lost. And this is quite common for the Tibetan translations. What was not included into the Tengyur was not copied. It was not copied. It was lost. But here we have 4 translations in the Tengyur, plus 1 as a Dunhuang manuscript. So that's why I was very happy to see all of them. For my translation of this text, I could rely on all these different Tibetan translations, and I look forward to the time when I, of course, can see the Sanskrit text. I hope I will live, see it. Yeah, this is my aspiration. So basically, this is more or less all I wanted to tell you, and it is 6 o'clock. So let me stop here and ask you, do you have any questions?
Questions, settlements.
You have a question? Okay, please.
I have actually 3 questions.
3 questions, okay.
The first question is about maybe it's a bit deviating away from textual studies question, but what is the difference between Bodhisattva Samantabhadra and Buddha Samantabhadra? I'm unclear on that.
Okay, so first of all, there are many Buddhist Samantabhadras. There is what is the sutra? There is a sutra, I forgot the name of the sutra, in which it is, okay, maybe I will remember, I tell you. In this sutra, it is described, of course, it's Mahāyāna Sutra, and there is a Buddha Samantabhadra, which is described. He lives, or he dwells in a Buddha field called unblinking. I think animisa, something like this in Sanskrit. Why it is unblinking? Because he doesn't teach. Bodhisattvas just come and gaze at him without blinking. And this is how they attain realization. Buddha Samantabhadra, Mahāyāna Buddha Samantabhadra. Yeah? Also, keep in mind that if you look at the Amarakosha of Amarasingha, you will see that Samantabhadra is named there as a name of Buddha Śākyamitra. So this is just another name of Buddha Śākyamitra. And there are many Samantabhadras. Yeah? But I think you have in mind this Kuntu the primordial Samantabhadra Buddha. Yeah? But he's actually not that popular in the Mahāyāna. Yeah, so in the Mahāyāna, we usually speak about other Buddhas, not about Buddha Samantabhadra as the primordial Buddha. It is interesting that we have this Kunzang Milam, yeah, the Samantabhadra, Buddha Samantabhadra's aspiration, but it is a tantric aspiration. Yeah, it belongs to the Tantra. And how we can say it is a Tantra text? Because it contains self-visualization. Yeah? Visualize yourself as a Samantabhadra, right? Immediately we can say it is a Tantra text. So answer would be, there are many Buddha Samantabhadras, and I just mentioned what Yeshide says about Mahāyāna Bodhisattva Samantabhadra. He says that he is actually a Tathagata. It is very common in the Mahāyāna teachings that, this 10 Bhumi Bodhisattvas, Manjushri, Samantabhadra, and all the others, they're actually Buddhas. They just manifest as Bodhisattvas for the benefit of beings. It's very common explanation. Yeah, Manjushri is a Buddha. He got enlightenment many, long time ago, and he has his own pure land, Vimala, pure land of Manjushri. I'm interested in that. No Chinese. Amitabha Pure Land is packed. Oh, Buddha Mitofu, yeah. Very crowded. This one no one knows. So, yeah, so the answer would be there are many Samantabhadras. Yeah? Mahāyāna Buddhist Samantabhadras are many. It's also a name of Śākyamitra, and there's this Quintuzampo Primordial Buddha Samantabhadra as well. Yeah? Second.
You said that in one of the editions, which were on manuscripts, which were found, it's referenced to as Manjushri Parinidhana, and you said that says something. What does it say?
Since I'm not a sinologist, I cannot make any claims, but I have read sinological research in which they say that actually in China, Manjushri was connected with Samantabhadra somehow, to the point that they were kind of taken as one. Yeah, but I cannot judge on that because I don't know. Yeah, I'm not a specialist on that. But also, if you look at the aspiration itself, Manjushri is mentioned there. Yeah? For example, this famous verse, yeah? Manjushri knows it correctly. Samantabhadra does in the same manner, right? So why not? So these two explanations I have seen, but I don't know, basically, yeah, this Chinese scholar was saying that Samantabhadra and Manjushri were somehow connected in the Chinese Buddhism. Yeah, but you should find out more if you're interested, because I don't know, basically.
And you also said that only Watanabe and Devi, his
Academic,
yeah.
actual critical.
Yeah, so you use this word critical apparatus. What does that mean?
Because, when we establish a critical edition, we need to be very clear as to the method, how we establish this edition. First of all, we need to list all the sources, yes? And then all the changes we introduce, we need to attest. See, so it's called variants of the text, right? So students know, we went over it for almost 1 month, yeah? And it's a very serious thing in the textual studies, because the edition we produce, it should be crystal clear. What have we done? With which variant did we go? Yeah, which changes did we introduce? However, it's quite common when, for example, Parashuranga Vaidya, I think his motivation probably wasn't that bad. Yeah, he just wanted to make Sanskrit text available. But what he was doing, he was taking editions done by someone else, introducing some changes. He has his ideas about what is Buddhist Sanskrit. Yeah? He was introducing changes without any attestation. So we don't know what he changed, why he changed it, right? He didn't attest what were his witnesses or his variants he used. So he was just publishing it. You see, so then we got a text. It is a Sanskrit text, right? It is different from all the others. So then we say, yes, it is a different edition, but we don't know what he has done. And I was told by my supervisor, Mattia Salvini, that he was just, taking someone else's edition and basically messing them up. So Professor Salvini doesn't recommend Vaidya as an author of Sanskrit edition. So he said, you should look for an edition which was produced before him. And usually you can find an edition produced before him, an actual critical edition. So same goes for the Gaṇḍavyūha edition of Suzuki and Idumi or Izumi. It doesn't have any apparatus. So maybe they had just one manuscript they transcribed and kind of corrected, yeah, but we don't know, basically. Yeah? So that's why we cannot say it is a critical edition. Watanabe worked with 9 Sanskrit manuscripts. He analyzed them. He divided them into 2 recension lines, northern and southern recension line, and he attested all of it. Yeah, same for Sushama Devi. She worked with xylographs, and yeah, everything is also attested there. So you can see what did she use, what were her emendations, yeah, why he did such and such editorial decisions, etc. Yeah, so that's why we can say, oh, it is an actual critical edition. Otherwise, no, we cannot say that. It was the third one. Okay, thank you.
Any other comments from the?
We have an online question. Have you seen anything in the commentary attributed to the Dignāga that gives you an idea about whether this could be by the Pramana by the Nāgārjuna?
No, there is nothing. It is just a synoptic commentary. It is attributed to Dignāga, but it is just as all the others. So basically, it's not different. As I said, it is just another hyparchetype of the same Sanskrit text. The only difference, if you look into Tengyur, you will see before the Dignāga's commentary a small outline. Yeah, but this outline, I think it was added by the Tibetan translators. It probably wasn't there in Dignāga's hyparchetype itself. Also, I forgot to tell you as to that those synoptic commentaries have different titles. For example, Dignāga's is called Dunhuang, Samgraha Artha, the condensed meaning. Yeah? And the one attributed to Nāgārjuna is called Nibandhana, Shejar. But it doesn't mean anything, yeah? Because why it is called Shejar Nibandhana? Because in the end of the commentary, there is a dedication verse in which the author writes that through the merit of composing this Shejar, this Nibandhana, may all beings, etc., etc. Yeah? So basically, I think they just took it from there. And as for the Samgraha Artha, this Dön Kundupa condensed meaning, at the beginning of the synoptic commentaries, you have this sentence that Dön Kundupa of the commentary is tenfold. Yeah, the condensed meaning is tenfold, and then 10 points of the outline are being presented. So I think it was taken from there. And what is more, in the Tibetan catalogues, they are called Drelpa, they're called Tika. So which tells me that the name was changed later on. Yeah, for example, Dignāga's commentary is also called Tika. So, and now it is called Nibandhana or Shejar. Yeah, so basically they changed it when they made Tengyur collection here. Otherwise, no, nothing tells us. It's not about Pramana, it's just a Mahāyāna Sutra commentary. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you for this talk. It was very informative. I have a question about genre. So you mentioned that among the Chinese translations, one of them has in the title at the very end, so Pranidhana Stotra. Does this mean that we might be able to consider this as belonging to this genre as well? And I'm thinking specifically about Pranidhana and Stotra. What do you think? Like, do these genres maybe have some overlap or share some similar features?
So first of all, when it comes to these Sanskrit titles in the Chinese catalogues, I'm not entirely sure whether they actually appear in the Chinese translations or they were attributed by the author of the catalog, yeah, Nanzhou, because once again, I'm not sinologist, I don't know, because he does provide Sanskrit titles, right? So then, of course, if you judge based on Sanskrit, it is called a praise, yeah, stotra. So then if we try to, hypothesize, like, is stotra same as pranidhana or are they different? I think every pranidhana also contains praises, right? So of course, Buddhas and Bodhisattvas are praised in many ways. So we can say that pranidhana is a stotra, or it contains stotra elements, yeah? But they have a little bit different function, I think, from the Mahayana perspective, because why pranidhana in the Mahayana is so important? Because all the results Bodhisattvas attain at the time when they become Buddhas, all their enlightened activities are attained based on the causes they create by means of pranidhana, by means of aspiration. That's why we have a special bhumi dedicated to pranidhanas, on which Bodhisattvas do nothing else, just make aspirations. I think it's 9th bhumi. Yeah? So basically, not long before they become Buddhas, the whole bhumi, this time when they dwell on the 9th bhumi, they do nothing else. They just make aspirations. Those general bodhisattva aspirations, those we see in the Dashabhumika, like, may I serve all the Buddhas, may I purify Buddha fields, etc., etc., and specific. For example, Vaishāji Guru, yes, Sangyamalla, the medicine Buddha. He, apart from this general aspirations, he also made many specific aspirations, so-called 12 special aspirations of Vaishāji Guru. Like, for example, when I become a Buddha, may I free all beings from illnesses, from hunger, etc., etc. So then when he became a Buddha, he attained this special capacity to do it. Yeah? So why? Precisely because of cause and effect. He made this cause. He generated a cause by means of pranidhana, of aspiration. He gained the result of these special powers to actually do it as a Buddha. That's why in the Mahāyāna, pranidhana is a very specific thing, and it's like indispensable tool, you know, because if all of us, we want one day to become Buddhas, endowed with capacities, enlightened powers, etc., etc., we need for this a cause. What is this cause? Aspiration is the cause. You see, that's why in the Mahāyāna, we need to do as many aspirations as possible. But for this, please watch Dzongsar Khyentse's Rinpoche teaching, because, you know, it's like he explains it amazingly well and in very inspiring manner. I remember from these teachings when what he gave here in IBA, you know, he said something like, there is no recording actually. I was stupid, I didn't record it, but there is no recording. I couldn't find the recording. So he said something, you know, when bodhisattvas make these aspirations, it's like there is a land no one wants. Let's say, you know, wasted land. And then they take it, this wasted land no one wants. And then, you know, they create like mansions and palaces on this wasted land. No one can see the pressure of this lands, only bodhisattvas can. This is the power of these aspirations, you know, like it looks like nothing basically, yeah? But actually it leads to amazing, great results. So that's why in this sense, I would say pranidhana and stotra is different, because stotra just generate merit, yeah, through praising the Buddhas. But pranidhana has much more far-reaching results, yeah. So in this sense, I would say it is different.
Thank you.
I'm interested in your definition of dhanis. It seems to be larger than what Davidson's does with dhanis.
Davidson hates Tantra, you know? He hates Buddhism in general, you know? When I did my MA, he came to our class, yeah? And he said, I hate Vajrayana, he said. Nevertheless, this is what he researches, yeah? I was like, I still kind of puzzled. I remember him very well, yeah? He's, of course, amazingly talented scholar, and he wrote a lot about Dharanis, yeah? So what I can say from traditional perspective, at least, yeah, Dharanis are classified in Bodhisattva Bhumi. So if you open Asanga's Bodhisattva Bhumi, you will see these categories of Dharanis. I think there are 4 categories, as far as I remember. And one of them is Dharma Dharani. Dharani in Sanskrit comes from the root dr, yeah, to remember, to hold in mind. Yeah? Something like Dharma Dharani would be like a method to retain the Dharma. There is another one, for example, Artha Dharani is also there. So the Dharani to remember the meaning or the purpose. Yeah? We cannot decide because Artha has so many meanings. But basically there are different categories. One is also very interesting, the last one. It is like a Dharani which helps bodhisattvas to cultivate kshanti, patience. Yeah, so there are like these 3, the 4th one, I don't actually remember, but you can look it up. Yeah? So like when we look at these categories, at least from the traditional perspective, we can see that Zanchumalam Pranidhana, Bhadracaryāpraṇidhāna can be viewed as a Dharma Dharani. So it is a tool to retain the Dharma. So basically by reciting all these verses, which tells us what is the Bhadracarya, what is the good conduct, yeah, the Bodhisattva conduct, we once again and again, we bring it to mind. So in this sense, it is Dharani, right? But also Dharani has this transcendental meaning, yeah? And this is what Davidson liked to fixate on. Yeah, Dharani is a transcendental thing. I mean, it has a function, of course. But if you ask my opinion, what is this function? I would say it has to do with Satyavachana, yeah? The word of the truth. And it's not a tantric thing, because even in the foundational vehicle teachings, we have aspects of Satyavachana. For example, you remember Angulimala story. After he already became a good one, became a monk, yeah? Once he was walking and he saw a woman who couldn't give birth. And she was in great pain. And he wanted to help her, but he didn't know how. So he rushed to the Buddha and he asked, I want to help you. What should I do? Buddha tell him, go back and proclaim the words of the truth. So he came back and he said something like, my discipline was always pure or something like this. Yeah? And since it was true, she could give birth. Yeah? So he could help her. So then if you ask, what is Satyavachana then? What is the word of the truth? This Dempetsik, yeah? It is just Pratitya Samutpada, the cause and effect. Right? So since it was true, it has this power, the power of truth, and it has a result. And I think this is how Dharani works, yeah? Because what do they repeat? It's not just some mumbling, right? They repeat the words of the Buddha. The word of the Buddha is Satyavachana. It is the word of truth, right? So since they repeat this, they attain certain result. So this is the power of Dharani. This is also how Heart Sutra can stop some storm, yeah, or rainfall, whatever. Yeah, they recite it quite commonly also in China. It's super popular. Some catastrophe happens, they make rituals by reciting Heart Sutra. You're like, why? No one knows how it can help, right? But it is the word of the truth. It is the word of the Buddha, so it has special power. This is how it works as a Dharani. I would think something along these lines, yeah? At least if we look at how it is in the Mahāyāna sources themselves, yeah? At least, yeah, Bodhisattva Bhumi, what I saw, it is not transcendental, yeah? It is quite specific, Mahāyāna teaching as they are, without any extras. And it works through this power, yeah? Through this Pratitya Samutpada cause and effect power, I think.
Great answer. Thank you. Any other comments or questions?
There is another one. Do you think the Gaṇḍavyūhasūtra also began as an independent text, or does it look like it was always part of the Avatamsaka?
Sutra. Yeah, Gaṇḍavyūhasūtra most probably was an independent text because it is available in Sanskrit as an independent text. And in Buddha Avatamsaka, we have many paras which are also available or known as independent sutras, right? And apart from that, in the Gaṇḍavyūha itself, because Gaṇḍavyūha is also large, it has 45 chapters. And some of these chapters are known as independent sutras. For example, Maitreya Vimoksha, yeah, the Sutra of Maitreya's Liberation, is part of Gaṇḍavyūha. It is well known as an independent sutra. So that's why usually researchers of the Buddha Avatamsaka and Gaṇḍavyūha, for example, Peter Skilling, he says that we should treat Buddha Avatamsaka not just as a single sutra, but rather as a collection of sutras connected for different reasons. Yeah? But if you ask me why Bhadracaryāpraṇidhāna was joined with Buddha Avatamsaka, in my opinion, it is very logical. Why? Because Samantabhadra is very important in the Buddha Avatamsaka. It has 4 chapters in which Samantabhadra is either a proclaimer or someone, a protagonist who is very important. So that's why it's very, in my opinion, super logical that they joined Bhadracharya with the Buddha Avatamsaka, even if we consider that it was joined later. Yeah? So basically, this whole teachings in which Samantabhadra is present or is teaching, etc., culminates with his aspiration, something he proclaims. That's why I strongly disagree with Dr. Douglas Osto, who calls it an awkward marriage of 2 texts. I think they fit together very nicely, very logically.
So we will close here.
5 minutes. 5 minutes. No more
5
questions.
minutes. No more questions.
No more questions.
Oh, there is one. Yes.
Hi, thank you very much for your talk. I was wondering regarding, there's a great discrepancy between the Theravadan canon and the Mahāyāna and Vajrayana canon. And I was wondering why texts that say that they originated from, say, when the Buddha was in Travasti or in Rajgir, why are those texts not found in both canons?
I mean, it's a very good question, probably quite extensive one. But no, when I think about canons, what I try to keep in mind that canons are human production, first of all. And this whole division into, Mahayana, non-Mahayana, and usually from traditional perspective, what is in Tibet is called Vajrayana belongs to the Mahayana, because Mahayana is divided into Sutra and Tantra Mahayana. Vajrayana is just Tantra Mahayana. So it is artificial division. And what brings me to this conclusion? First of all, if you look how the great institutions of Buddhist study operated in India, they never divided between Mahayana and non-Mahayana, right? So in Nalanda, Mahayana, non-Mahayana both were taught. And it is quite already common fact that also in the same monasteries, some monks could practice Mahayana, others could practice non-Mahayana, right? But then at some point, this separation was done. And I don't think it was always done skillfully. Because, for example, what happened in Thailand, because last year I spent in southern Thailand, and archaeological sites tell us that Mahayana and what we call Vajrayana or Tantra Mahayana was well spread there, you see. But then, since the king decided to just support one non-Mahayana school, Theravada school, which actually was not even that prominent in India. Some say that it wasn't even existent in India. It's all like all Sri Lanka thing, right? All the others slowly disappeared. But we have statues, Mahayana statues there, excavated. Avalokiteshvara, Tara, etc., etc. It means that it all was there, and it was not separated. It was not divided as how we divide it now. And this whole idea about non-Mahayana and Mahayana, I think it is a Western idea. Because if you look how this whole research started, it came from where? From Europe. Basically, English scholars, they came to Sri Lanka and they said, oh, this is original Buddhism. This is the thing. Mahayana is not the thing. It's not the word of the Buddha. These two things are different. Actually, they are not that much different. And there are many what we call Theravada scholars who are open-minded scholars who would tell you that these notions which are emphasized in the Mahayana, let's say bodhicitta, bodhisattva, etc., they are present in the non-Mahayana. They're just not emphasized, or they're like presented differently. You see, for example, shunyata, emptiness, right? Anatman is there in the non-Mahayana. It is just called Anatman. It is not called shunyata, but shunyata is Anatman in a sense, right? Mahayana just goes a little bit further, develops it and makes it more profound in a sense. But in my opinion, Dharma is one. It is not divided. It is just like for certain beings, something fits. For others, something else fits. So that's why there are different teachings. And Tantra, it is based on Mahayana. It is based on bodhicitta, etc., etc. It just uses skillful means to attain results quicker. But it is Mahayana in essence. You cannot find any tantric method without giving rise to bodhicitta. It's impossible, right? So that's why this whole division is artificial, in my opinion. And then, how texts also were decided or kind of divided. For example, if you look at those Tibetan catalogues, you will see that in the first catalog, some texts were called non-Mahayana texts, but then later on, they were reclassified as Mahayana texts. You see, it's very difficult to decide what is what. You see, because now we say, okay, if shunyata is mentioned, it is Mahayana text, or if like Buddha fields are mentioned, it is a Mahayana text. Okay, but it's just our decision, right? Yes, please. Disagree, please.
No. I thank you very much for your response. I didn't mean to. I know it's a very charged topic, but I didn't.
I really like non-Mahayana. I'm a big fan, actually. I would like to be non-Mahayana. It's so nice.
Okay. Yeah,
Simple.
no, I'm here because, I want to learn, and I really respect your opinion on the matter. You're very knowledgeable on the subject of textual studies.
I'm not knowledgeable in the non-Mahayana, actually. No, this institution is Mahayana biased. This is always study. When I was in Thailand, I tried to learn a little bit more about non-Mahayana, but just very little.
Okay. Yeah. Well, first I'll say that within the Theravada, I mean, Shunyata is mentioned. It's just, again, it's not emphasized, right? And that, from my understanding, according to the Theravadan lore, Ananda was gifted with, this incredible memory, and he was there at the first council where he recited each and every sutta that they have. So yeah, it begs the question, right? Why would he have omitted certain suttas that are found within, say, for example, the Heart Sutra, right? That are very important, but for some reason,
because in the Mahāyāna Nidanas, all of those guys are present. Arhats are present, right? All of them are there. So they also received it. The other question, would they chew it and swallow it? Yeah, it's another question. Probably not. But Ananda most probably heard it, right? Because he was always present. So I wouldn't, make these judgments, like, for example, Ananda, he was like, oh, first council, I will not recite those. Yeah. We don't know. So probably he recited everything. Those people have what we call mijepe dzimbo, unfailing memory. So they heard once, they could never forget. Can you imagine? They just repeated 100 times, we still don't remember. So that's why we don't know what was recited there. But I would kind of try to keep this open-minded perspective, and also kind of remember that when you speak about Theravada, right, and Pali Canon, we speak about 1st century CE. 1st century CE. It's like at least 5 centuries later than the Buddha. These 5 centuries, teachings were transmitted orally, only orally. So many things would be transmitted and forgotten, and etc., etc. So that's why I wouldn't, fixate on a Pali Canon as a non-Mahayana. I think it was kind of made into something, and also it has a purpose for these specific beings with this specific faculties and capacities and goal. Once again, what is their aspiration? They just want to be arhats. They just want to be free from suffering, not because they don't know about bodhisattvas. I talked to them. I had many students who were non-Mahayana monks, and they told me, yes, we know about, also because, they know that the Buddha was bodhisattva, right? It is common knowledge, but they say, yeah, but it's too difficult. I know about it, but it's just too difficult. I cannot take it. I just want to be liberated myself. This is as much as I can carry, right? So that's why, once again, to say that they don't have a perspective on the bodhisattva ideal, no, they do, right? This is just not what they aspire for due to the causes that they created. But anyway, it's a large question. There may be. Yes, sir, please. I will move to my last slide because I want you to appreciate it.
I just wanted to say, just for that there are very open-minded Thai Kuba Ajahns currently that have that actually have explicitly verified through their nimittas and samadhi practice of the beings like Avalokiteshvara, and we're very highly respectful of Vajrayana. So wanted to.
I have no doubt, because in my experience, in all the traditions, the higher the realization of the master is, the less judgmental, the less segregational these people are. Their activity is to unite, not to separate, not to judge. This is our job, Oh, this is it, this is not it. The higher people are, the less judgmental. And not only in Buddhists. I know very interesting stories also about Christian masters, who I had one friend who was a nun for a long time. How she became a nun? She was Christian, and she came to a Christian elder in Orthodox tradition. And he told her, oh, you must recite mantras. She didn't know what it is. She was like, what is mantra? He's like, oh, you know, there's some people will come, you will meet them, they will tell you. And then first 2 Buddhist teachers came, brothers Kempo, whom she met, and she became Buddhist. Christian elder told her that for those people, there is no separation, you know. I don't have doubts. It's just our obscured mind think, you know, to judge and to divide things. Okay, so this is my cat. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure seeing you, and have a nice evening. Thanks for coming. Thank you, Jan.